Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together, share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a book club for music. It's a fun time had by all. I'm PD Rave, and one of these days I will be able to smoothly say the words gather together. But today's not that day. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my quorum, my posse. We've got David. We've got Matt.
I think David's still here.
I saw his eyes move.
Yes.
Are any of us really here?
Yeah.
Whoa.
We've got
You've
Brett.
been on that Panama Red.
Well, I've not been on the Panama Red, but I have been on the Big Ben's nut sauce. Oh yeah, it's a classic from the past, everyone. It's
Hashtag
everyone's
legal in
favorite
Indiana.
brand of nut sauce. Take that, Deoxit.
Are
It's
we-
your
are we-
move.
Hey, don't make me get my Fader Lube.
Oh no.
Guys, we're streaming on Twitch. Please keep it clean.
Yes.
But all aboard. Capped on Tape is here for you.
Yes.
Oh, now
Um,
we're talking.
Oh yeah. We're here to talk about music. We're here to talk about an album. We're here to talk about an interesting album. The provider of the album this week is David. David, what have you brought for us this week?
I brought an album because, quite frankly, I'm a little sick of music. There's really no other way to put it. I'm kind of sick of music. I'm in a rut personally where music just wasn't interesting to me. And I had to check out your boy, Pat Shennington, on the YouTubes. And he talked about an album from 2019 that really caught his attention. And it really caught my attention. And I'm talking about the 2019 album from Los Angeles-based noise project Pedestrian Deposit, album titled Dyers Hands.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about expectations. It'll be interesting. Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album?
You could have described with every word exactly what this album was, and I would still not guess what this was. I had no clue. I do not. There are certain circles. I run in a pretty wide range of circles, but I honestly don't know that I have anyone in my 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon that could explain to me what this album is.
Yes.
And I get to try and review it with you guys tonight.
Matt, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
Pretty much none. David said noise project, so I was feeling some combination of dread and excitement.
Let's talk about what it is as an album, what it is musically. David, I wasn't sure what to expect. I kind of had an idea. So I have I've don't listen to noise on a regular basis. But
that is a great sentence.
But I listen to noise all the time. But like the noise genre. But I do have it's something that I've been aware of. It's a genre and a style and a style of performance that I've been aware of in different forms. There's I'm pretty sure a nice noise scene here in Miami, if I'm not mistaken, and there's noise scenes everywhere. But so I had some frame of reference, but I didn't know what exactly I was gonna be getting into with this particular project. But yeah, David, how would you describe this album musically?
I would describe this as a journey that you really have to kind of let yourself go with. Just let go of the idea of what music is supposed to be and what it's supposed to sound like. Just all kinds of standard structures and concepts, just throw them out the window. Like I said, right now, I'm just bored with most music. I'm bored with the music that I like. No vaporwave, no future funk, no metal, no prog. It's completely off the grid. It's kind of like when a band you really like for about 15 years releases about 5 albums and then says, you know what, we're done doing that. We're gonna do something completely off the grid. That's what we're gonna do. If you want to come along, you're more than welcome. But this album is not even the strangest album I wanted to bring on the podcast recently, but that one is 6 albums worth of music, so we're not going to do that. But this is one of those where, of course, this is one of those where you kind of have to allow yourself to kind of let it take over in a way. And there are a lot of unconventional things going on. There's very little structure. There is some instrumentation, but not a lot. But when it's there, it's welcome. It feels almost at the right time, even though it feels kind of random. And there's harshness. There's harshness with a point. There's harshness with a mission. It's to keep you engaged. It's to keep you focused. And it is really kind of an adventure. What kind of adventure is up to you.
Mm-hmm. Brett, how would you describe this album musically?
I mean, musically, I don't think this is very. This is not that kind of album where you judge it musically. There are strings that show up in here, and there's like, you know, strings gone through reverb. There are things that are not unlike, let's say, maybe a Silent Hill analog video game or a horror movie. There's even a part that I would say is a familiar sound to many, but also, you know, there's like, hey, you want to hear some line noise that's echoed and like some strings that are on like a loop that's in a way that is made to be creepy. I feel like I did go and find some visual demonstrations of a live performance of this music. So I kind of have, like, I listened to it once where I had no clue. I could have guessed at what was going on. And then I watched a video from like 2015 or before from like the LA noise scene. From like, I think I found like it was an LA Times article, an LA Weekly, sorry. Not that I know anything about LA's, like, their scene of any kind. But I read about it, and I kind of saw what was going on, and there's definitely a performance part of this that we're missing out on. But
their performances are on YouTube, and who doggy, there's something.
And they've been doing this for a while. It should be noted, isn't this like on their own? This is on their own record label, I believe, or one of their record labels.
Just recently celebrated their 20th year.
So, like, you know, it's a thing. It's not a thing that I'm like, I don't really have the vocabulary to be like, oh, the when they looped this kind of echo in this other kind of echo, and then it artifacted in the digital way, but then they also had the analog thing. I can't really describe that. You're gonna have to go to Spotify and scroll through and come up with your own. The English is a living language. We can come up with words for ourselves. I can't necessarily make them all for you. Sproings did occur in this album, but they were so, like, it was the sproings per minute were like off the charts, so I couldn't hit the sproing button. But this album made me think about the way that I think some people look at jazz music. and think that it's just random stuff that's going on. And I'm like, with this music, I know they very much tried to do something here. I can see there was effort going, but it's hard to describe. Now I'm gonna wait for Mr. Walton over there to give us his rundown. So I don't like, it's hard. Like, I've been staring at this Google Doc and being like, I need to type something on this, but like, how?
It's hard.
Text is a bad way.
So to do that, especially when you're used to putting certain things into certain frameworks, and then you have to like
vocabulary.
We're breaking the mold.
Exactly. We're breaking the walls down.
In 60 hertz, by the way. I can tell that they're hanging out in the US of A.
Yes.
There's something about the squeals of that 50 hertz that
yeah. Matt, how would you describe this album musically?
The closest kind of reference point that I was able to think of was there's a classical piece called Threnody to the Victims of Hiroshima, which is kind of this noise poem thing. And really, it's only similar as far as, they both have strings and there's a bunch of weird noises that they make. But that's kind of something that was recurring to me. But the whole thing, like, it easily, if you told me this was the soundtrack of a movie, I would believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of either horror or kind of Lynchian, something I could imagine this being. Yeah. I can imagine David Lynch using this in something, and that's probably also partially why I connected to the Threnody of Victims of Hiroshima, because he used that. And if you ever want to see a music video for that classical piece, check out Twin Peaks season 3, because he did it. It was an interesting mix of some noises that were kind of calming and calming to listen to and interesting to listen to, and others that were just deeply, deeply unpleasant for me to hear.
Mm-hmm. As unpleasant as when you hear that Sirenscape noises of wet things getting stuck into. I see that in your soul through video. On episodes of Through the Tomes, brought to you by the fine folks at Here.
Yes.
Available wherever fine podcasts are RSS'd.
Yes.
Well, once I get everything together.
Really simply syndicated.
Yes.
That's right. Thanks, Adam Curry. You make this show even better every time.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to like look at this and like say this is music. Like, putting it in the framework of music is limiting in that sense. But yeah, it's one of those things where like this is gonna be. This is using like themes of like tension and release. Definitely that's one of the big things of like it seems like it's, you could say it's unstructured, but it has structures of like using like tension and release, and then like just abandonment, kind of leaving you in a space, kind of floating, and then like something being trapped and trying to escape out, or there are like themes of like using noise but trying to like evoke emotions. I think it's easier to just like put this into the elements of like just the end game emotion that it's going for, than it is necessarily in the it's using this time signature or this this rhythm or this melody or this same thing like this. It's just like, hey, I'm going to use these sounds and these noises to make you feel or explain the thought process of this feeling, and it uses as well it has those moments where like it kind of like there's these moments where it's like it assaults you and it's percussive, and then like it shoots you out, like almost like you get these moments where it shoots you out of an airlock or something. You get these moments of like of you could almost imagine somebody like thrashing around like a padded room and then giving it up and just twiddling their thumbs and resigning to passive idling thoughts. Like you can kind of like explore those. This is a very hoity-toity way of like explaining it, but you almost have to.
Hoity-toity, Petey. You're doing great. I'm loving this.
It's because it's hard to do this in like a basic music structure way, especially if you like me. And then especially if you're like me, who doesn't really have that much vocabulary as a non-musician, doesn't have the vocabulary to begin with, and I'm always going to look at it just on the pure emotion of it. I think it's those are going to be the things that it I would describe being the core elements of it. It's like tension and release, and then sensations of abandonment and things like that. Yeah, let's okay, so there are very few tracks. It's just a lot of on this album. There's five. So we're probably gonna talk about all of them, but it's still, the track segment is still about drilling down what makes each individual track distinct and why. So
by length, they have a B-side entire track.
Yeah,
and a very
longer than
track.
In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida.
That's
Yes.
right. So this is on par with some of the prog albums.
So this is still very much in my wheelhouse.
That's
Yes.
right. You just flip to the B side when you want the long play.
Yes.
Yeah.
David, what would be some of the key moments in the tracks that you would zero in on?
The opening track, Car Theory. Look at me breaking my own norm in mentioning the first track. It felt like it was two entirely different experiences, listening to this in my car and then listening to this on my speakers at home. And I love that kind of thing. I loved that the first piece of this track was kind of unrelenting in welcoming you in. And when we talk about the first track on an album, everyone always likes to talk about it being a template for what you're going to hear. And in some ways it is, and in some ways it's not, just because of how dynamic this entire album can be in many ways. What Can't Be Given, the second track, I described it as a nap after the insomnia of the first track. Imagine being up for like 2 days and really not getting any decent amount of sleep, and then you've got the day off work and you can crash and get some Z's. That's what the second track was. Auger. I really liked Auger. I felt like this was the palate cleanser track on a palate cleanser album, and it was simultaneously harsh and soothing, and it had these two notes throughout the track that were just kind of in its own space, where everything else on the track was swirling around those two notes, and it really, really went well together for me. And the final track, Beneath the Salt, is really just a culmination of the entire album, done really well. And it sends you on the entire roller coaster of the album, but then it sets you back down very calmly.
Mm-hmm. Brett, what would be some of the key moments for you in the tracks?
The key moments in the tracks. What Can't Be Given. There's a lot more musicality that goes on there after it opens in a very, like, there are ways that you can like use music in like more melodic ways to do the like the breathe in, the breathe out, the like the build up, the crescendo, the decrescendo. Like you can do things with that and start to figure out the science behind it. And there's definitely some science behind doing that exact same thing with just sounds, like soundtrack work. So like when what can't be given came through, it was the build up and the release kind of thing. But there's I mean that very much sounded to me like if I were to walk into a room and it was playing it through a speaker, like let's say a week ago I was walking through my living room and I heard this, I would go look at my computer and see if I had a game that like, or somebody accidentally connected to a Bluetooth speaker and like a game was still running in a like all tabbed out or something. It does sort of have that menu music-y soundtrack feel to it. Also, part of that is probably because I've been wired to associate cellos and stringed instruments in a certain way. So there is something with that, especially like the whole like concept of having a like ridiculously harsh sounding, cello, the heartstrings.
Yeah.
As has been abused in albums before. But auger, when you need to go out ice fishing and you need to get through that 2 feet through 2.5, 3 feet, like get that auger out, dig your hole. This was more, so there was the like the metal on metal scraping whale song. The worst ocean to be in, where the heavy metal are the whales. It was very much more like I'm not saying it's like an asylum movie soundtrack, because it's definitely better than, although I have enjoyed some Transmorphers and stuff. It's not to that point of like, it's not that it is something like when you said David Lynch, like it's something like there's some there's some like, and there's like the hitching loops of there's things going on that they do that are like, I'm gonna make things uncomfortable for you, and then beneath the salt, which everybody knows is your tortilla, beneath the salt is it's a doozy. 17 minutes, and it has movements. There's some like that creepy whale song, but like at like the 3-minute mark, you start getting like some singing, some squealing, and like then they be like that's where the artifact, like when people mix digital artifacts with analog static together, that just feels weird. And I think there was some of that going on, but again, I don't know. And then like, at the 15-minute mark, you get your like garden variety like echo cello in a creepy loop, like you're in a regular horror movie. And like it all sort of wraps up with like some silence and some muffled thumps. Thumbs up. Weird. Those were my road marks. If you buy my map, download me into your Garmin. That's what I will show you on this album.
I am loving all of your guys' descriptions for this.
Yes.
And I would imagine that I did not experience this album either in the funk that I personally need to, or smoking the funk that I needed to. So I'm doing what I'm supposed to with the abilities that I have.
Yeah. Matt, what would be some of the key moments for you in the tracks?
Crow Theory. I kept a running log, so I'll read through that real quick. Pizzicato violins, so maybe it won't be noise rock. Next line. Hopes dashed. Static with lots of high-pitched noise. This is painful. I have a bass DI that was making, and I kid you not, a lot of these same noises, like that really loud static and also like some sort of bad oscillation. Don't worry, I have it mostly fixed at this point. I broke some things that I need to replace, and then it should be good. What can't be given? This one. This was a good sign for the rest of the album because it just brings the energy way down in a good way, with just these nice drones, which I think were bowed upright bass, or whether real or sampled, but they had that certain resonance.
Oh, let me tell you, this is bespoke, like hobby grade, bowed broken instrument.
Nice.
I've
It might even be invoked.
Yeah, so there's that. And this one, the whole thing, I would less call this noise and more just kind of avant-garde ambient music or whatever.
Art rock.
Well, like that song, I would not put rock anywhere near the
if you think of like minerals dragging across things.
Yeah.
Pedestrian
Well,
deposits.
sure.
Pedestrian deposit.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
They deposited something.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brett sent me a picture of what looks to be a steel guitar.
Nice.
I'm sorry, but it's not.
Are you sure?
It's a bunch of stomp boxes, I believe.
Oh, well, fine. But yeah, Augur, this was kind of, I think, a nice mix. That this one really kind of brought me into that kind of horror movie David Lynch soundtrack, Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima thing, because it had this tense, few repeating notes throughout the entire song, which just kind of left you on edge. And then there were what I think were violins bowed behind the bridge, and that's kind of the amount of unpleasant noise that I personally can deal with usually. Like it's not so intense as to like exacerbate tinnitus or anything, but it's there enough to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, and you go to these tracks. Yeah, you gotta start with the Crow Theory, where like as we talked about, it has that like percussive like tension and then relief moments, percussive tension, relief moments. It kind of like repeats that, and then it just kind of like I said, it shoots you out an airlock into like a space of ambient noise, ambient sound, like ambient soundscape. We're just kind of just like living in this little bit of a void for it at the end of the track. What can't be given is more musical than what you hearing anywhere else, mainly just because it uses the string. But like, it's a nice like contrast to the other track, What Can't Be Taken, which is kind of like that's the one where it feels like I imagine something thrashing around like a padded room at a sanitarium. Like yeah, it makes me think of, what it makes me think of, if anybody remembers Rubber Johnny.
Yes,
the video,
I remember Rubber Johnny.
The
he
dude
snorted
in the
a line of something that was like that long.
Yeah, and it was a dude in a wheelchair with like a huge head, and it was like, and at some point it pops, and then it's like all this like crazy.
He
like
snorts
visuals.
a big old line of blow, and then the bass drops.
Yeah,
it's nuts. And it's supposed to be like some guy who's locked in a basement, like his family's. Yeah, it is some good internet video time, practical and digital effects.
Yeah, so it makes me think of like that, because it like that it has like similar soundscapes, but in more of like a noise feel. Yeah, the Augur kind of like has like those couple of notes that I almost think of like maybe like a like it invokes like maybe like a heartbeat, just a very, very slow heartbeat. That's like supposed to be like just a very like slowed down, like but in musical sense. And like I like that Beneath the Salt kind of like wraps things up in a nice musical way. Kind of like it has a lot of the similar themes that you see. It's like a where you revisit a lot of the themes that you see on the other tracks, but in one.
It's
big
like
track.
an overture, but at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be called.
Underture.
Don't say underture.
Yeah, it's okay.
Damn it.
I will not.
Or do, I don't know.
Yes. Underture.
And we have a show.
Yes. But like, it works like it and it ends nicely, and I think those are those moments and those that each contribute to what make up the country, the tent poles of the album. But let's bring it back around the horn and talk about some conclusive thoughts. Brett, how would you conclude on this album as a whole?
Well, first off, if you come to me for your opinions on this style of recording, check elsewhere, perhaps to other people who know more. This was an exercise in me trying to figure out how to come up with words to describe something that I've never really sat down and spent time with for as much as I have spent with this. I don't know if there's anybody in this world that I would recommend this to in a earnest, in the way that I would normally recommend things to people, in a way that is respectful to the effort that was put into it. There's obviously something here, and you don't do something for 20 years and be bad at it the whole time. So there's an audience. This is a world that I have no real involvement in or knowledge of. So that's cool. As an academic exercise, as a curiosity, as one more thing to put in my I know of this thing. And so I'm going to talk to Radomir about, because he's over in LA, and be like, hey, Radomir, can you go? I got a thing. You're going to love this.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
Send him to it. Yeah. You know what? As my brain's moving right now, Radomir, don't listen. But yeah, it's definitely not Panama Red. It's harder for me to describe, but that doesn't mean, I don't know. If I grew up listening to this, I might be able to have the ways to break it down, but this was very foreign to me. More foreign than actual foreign things that have been brought to this podcast. Man, this was a tough one, because I tend to with anything, the hardest with any hobby or any new, when you're intrigued with something, the hardest thing to grasp is the vocabulary, and what is the name for the thing.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Matt, how would you conclude on this album as a whole?
It was certainly an interesting experience. Mostly, I would say fairly enjoyable in a way overall. If the most intensely painful parts of this had been toned down, probably even just 10%, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. There were a few parts that were physically painful to hear. But overall, it was an interesting experience. Mostly just on the first track, Crow Theory, that it was a little much. Beneath the Salt, it kind of got tempered down enough and surrounded by more listenable things that it was an interesting experience.
Mm-hmm. This was a fascinating experience. This is definitely something where this lives in that that world of you have to be into it to even really enjoy it. This is definitely something where it's scholarly. This is perfect for bringing up if you were teaching jazz and popular music in a community college, and you want to talk about how, what is music even, man? And then like you have that class where you bring this and you talk about John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and you and you do that thing, where you talk about the that lesson.
And that Glassjaw album, like we did,
I honestly,
like is.
I would rather listen to this than that Glassjaw album.
What is what exactly?
Sick.
What
Burn.
But honestly,
So
I would rather this. I would rather listen to this. Is definitely would probably be a chore for a lot of people, musically. That being said, and it's not something I would like put into a playlist of like just things I want to just jam at any given notice. But this is definitely something where like when I want to just put it in my ears and just like get lost into it, I definitely enjoyed that aspect, especially just sitting down here. Like for me, I'm very much like there's like certain music where I just want to sit down here in my chair and just have it blasting in my ears and just with my headphones on and just like have it living inside of my head or in the stereoscape that is, to the left and the right of me and into my skull and nasal cavities, like just have that live like that. And I'm down for those kind of experiences. Not everyone is. And so that's a big caveat. This is I'm down for those experiences, but I definitely understand that this can be a musical chore and a lot of work for people. So it's hard to recommend this album, but I think there's something to experience here, even if it is homework. Ultimately, David, what is your conclusion on this album as a whole?
This was not homework to me. This was a palate cleanser. I was looking for something genuinely almost alien to what has come on Record Breakers before, even through my own selections. I wanted to essentially challenge myself to try and put my thoughts and what I was hearing into words with this album. I wanted something that was so far removed from my normal headspace because I just kind of grew tired of that. This was when I went through my art house film snob phase in my early 20s. This was me going to the theater that is in Royal Oak to see something that nobody else is seeing. That would be like me and 3 other people in the theater on a Saturday evening and getting that little itch that I have to really occasionally just go way off the beaten path and scratch that itch that I have. No, not everyone will appreciate this or enjoy it, but that's not the point. The point is that it was made and it exists, and it can be listened to. It can be enjoyed. It can be not enjoyed, but I think that it's important that something like this exists. And I'm glad that it takes what we generally call music and eschews it, pretty much takes it and puts it aside for a little while. And I kind of needed that. And it felt a little bit necessary for me right now. And if you find yourself in a headspace where nothing is really clicking, an album like this might be for you. If you've got some writer's block, if you're trying to forget the fact that it's the apocalypse, this might be something that might soothe that little voice in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are our thoughts on Pedestrian Deposits, Dyers Hands. Yeah, let's get to the main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's get to our haiku reviews, where we sum it all up in poetic form with the 575. Let's hit it. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haiku numero uno. Brett, what is your haiku?
What is good or bad? Definition of music. Enjoy what you like.
Mm-hmm. Matt, what is your haiku?
Get it.
Hi-fi non-beats to chill, study, and reflect to. Interesting thing.
Mm-hmm. My haiku. Yes, it's really noise. There's beauty in that soundscape. Not for everyone. David, what is your haiku?
An artful journey. A mix of harsh and serene. Great break from the norm.
Mm-hmm. And that about sums it up for Pedestrian Deposit, Dyers Hands. You can, of course, listen to this album on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. Follow along with us. Do your homework. Listen along. On that Spotify playlist, presumably, is next week's record. Brett, what do you have for us?
Well, I feel like I've said this before at some time. I don't know. I've been on this show forever for the last forever. Never was I gone. But for some reason I had notes for this album, but when I looked at the big doc, it wasn't on there. So I'm like, man, this is one of the good ones. I should really bring this one. So we're gonna go visit with a guy who from Detroit, who is still to this day director of jazz studies at the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music. And if I said Herb Alpert, you know that I'm going to make a better jazz guitarist choice. And we're going to listen to Kenny Burrell and Kenny Burrell's Midnight Blue. There are going to be some, I would say, best songs that exist on this album. And there's also a whole bunch of other songs that I don't nearly get to as much as the other one. So it'll be fun to have more of the same noise rock, their noise music that we've listened to, like the palate cleanser of. We'll come back to
Brett, Midnight Blue, Kenny Burrell.
Yeah.
Are you sure we haven't done that one?
No, because it was from November 19th. It was about the time that somebody in my family got a diagnosis, and I said, "Peace out," and we never recorded it.
Yeah.
It's not on the doc.
Yeah, it's not on the doc. I have it saved.
And I would have remembered talking to you about Detroit.
Yeah, I have it saved for that very reason, because it just was a thing that we were planning on doing, but we just never got around to it.
Okay.
It was a
I know that Brett and I have.
Oh yeah, I've transferred sheet music to you.
And
yes,
I have listened to this even outside of the context of this podcast.
I mean, it is on it is top 25 jazz albums.
Yeah,
not just guitar jazz.
Yeah.
So we're eating our Wheaties, but this is going to be one that's easier to listen to.
Yes. So look forward to that. But that'll be next week, and this is this week. And you can of course find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Matt is at MRickW. Brett is at HibbityRibbert, HIBBI2IBIBBARD. I'm at PD Rave. The show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Record Breakers, Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube and on Twitch. On Twitch, we stream live. We stream this every Wednesday. We record the show live there. We're actually even ahead of the podcast schedule, so you can be streets ahead, as it were.
Kayfabe.
Yes. But you kind of gonna get you a fun little bit, like be part of the cool club. So follow us along there. But we also do D&D on Tuesdays with Through the Tomes, and we also do Astroneer Thursdays because we love that game, and it's fun for me, Brett, and Daisy to just mess around in that game and have fun with the fun gameplay and the fun bugs and
Hey,
glitches.
if you want to hear about the Miami grid system, there is no better place than to watch us play Astroneer.
Yes. And that's what the beautiful thing about that. So yeah, follow us along there. Subscribe to the YouTube. Find us everywhere you find podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Pocket Cast, all those places. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.
Podcast rub belly, baby.
Network.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.